Story number 1. This was a long time ago. I was doing snowboarding classes, already way too advanced for the class, but it gave me something to do and get out of my parents' hair. At this time, I was still identifying as a girl. This was back in 2010. Since then, I've transitioned to become a man. It's been 8 years. This is important because of what happened next. I was with my class and going up the lift. Once I got off, I went right instead of left, like the rest of the class, and got a bit lost. There were a couple of guys at the top of the slope. I asked if they saw a class go by. They said no, but that I could go down with them. I beat them down the slope, and once at the bottom, I was completely separated from my class. I was already scared because there were still over an hour and a half left until my parents picked me up and I had lost my group. The guys said, "Let's go up again on this one." This lift only went to the super tough slope, and I mean really tough, steep with trees. I was already nervous but agreed, and we went up. At the top, the guys said they had a few beers in their car and that we should all go and get them. I was suspicious and honestly scared. I thought if I did make it down the slope, they would just corner me and take me to the car, since there was no one around at the bottom and it was right by the car lot. They kept nudging me forward by my hips and grabbing me, and then I had had enough. I sped down as fast as I could, ducked into the trees. This was the most terrifying thing I've ever done. I was going fast, and I had to go about 10 meters through the trees to get to the easier run and away from the two men. I fell halfway through out of panic and ended up seeing my teacher. I told her what happened, and she didn't let me out of her sight until my parents arrived. Now I wish I could go back and stay the hell away. Story number 2. This happened a while ago, so my recollection of this isn't going to be word for word, but here goes. I'm a teenager. Me and my mother live alone. We live basically in the middle of nowhere. The nearest town is a little less than an hour away, and the only things we have near us are a gas station and a bar. I know everyone who lives near me, and we rarely ever see new people in our neck of the woods. So just seeing someone who isn't familiar is suspicious enough, so this was pretty creepy. A couple years ago, it was the middle of the night. Me and my mother are night owls. We like to be awake from that midnight to 6 a.m. time period that most people prefer to be sleeping. My mother was watching TV in the living room, and I was using the computer in the kitchen. The kitchen and the living room are basically connected, so I wasn't too far away from her, only a few feet. The front door leads right into the living room. It's a door with 9 windows, so it's pretty easy to see inside. My mom looked towards the door and she saw somebody staring at her through the window, and he was wearing a hood that obscured almost all of his face. My mom jumped, and of course walked to the door and asked him what the hell he was doing. According to my mother, he looked pretty young, but she could barely see his face, so who knows how old he was. The man said something along the lines of, "Could you help me with my car? Please," in a tone I could only describe as miserable and off-putting. Even though it was dark, there should have been enough light for her to see a car. There was no car. The man was also holding his hands in his pockets tightly. My mother said no and apologized. This caused him to grip whatever was in his pocket tighter, so tight it caused his arms to tremble. He stayed a few more minutes and then he swiftly disappeared. Throughout the night, maybe 1 or 2 hours later, we thought we had heard slight weeping, but we didn't see anyone at any of our doors and windows. I may be making assumptions here, but I can only assume it was a weapon that he was holding in his pockets. This was a creepy as fuck experience, and it's safe to say he was going to lure my mother out of the house to do something sinister to her. A year ago, there was a very small metal plate jammed between the front door strike plate and the piece that goes inside of it. I'm not sure what it's called. We have zero idea where this metal plate came from, but the metal plate stopped our doors from locking, so I'm assuming it was put there so that somebody could get in at a later time. These things are probably not related, but it made me think of the man, because this was deliberately placed there by somebody, and we're not sure why. Creepy guy staring at my mother through the door after midnight, in the middle of nowhere. Let's not meet again. Story number 3. This happened just last night. I live in beautiful San Jose, California, on maybe the border of the nice part of town and the ghetto in a second-story condo. I suck at sleeping, so while I'm laying awake in bed around 3 a.m., I suddenly hear a man riding by on a bicycle. It's important to note here that we have homeless people rummaging through the dumpsters immediately below our bedroom window nearly every single night, and I never feel afraid. However, this man, as he passes my window, starts loudly yelling, "I'm gonna get you. I'm gonna cut out your lungs," in a seemingly maniacal tone of voice. It almost sounded like he was joking, except that because of the volume and the tone, you could tell that he most certainly was not joking. It was a voice that I feel like I'll never forget. I don't think I've ever felt so afraid in my life, and I would consider myself the type that really doesn't feel fear particularly often. My initial reaction was that he was chasing someone, and while I felt like I maybe should call 911, I didn't want to chance him hearing me on the phone. We have to sleep with our windows open because no one installs air conditioning here for some unknown reason. My 3-month-old daughter was also asleep in the next room with the window open, on the second story though, and maybe that was part of the reason I felt so abnormally fearful, because the last thing I would ever want to do is put her in danger. Anyway, like I said, the guy sounded like he was riding past on a bicycle, and he continued on his trajectory away from my condo, but I continued to hear him yelling for the next 15 minutes, maybe circling on a nearby street. I kept debating whether or not to call 911, or whether to wake up my sleeping husband to see what he thought, but I basically felt almost frozen in fear, which is highly uncharacteristic for me, so ended up doing neither of those things. He rode past our window maybe once or twice more during his 20-minute-long frenzy, till finally I couldn't hear him anymore. Ultimately, I have no idea whether he was actually chasing someone or something. I never felt like I heard any second party at all, or whether he was just high as a kite. But the one thing I do know is that I've never experienced fear the way I did last night. It felt almost visceral, and I truly hope I never feel that kind of fear again. Story number 4. My grandparents own a cabin on a remote lake, a few hours from the city we live in. I've been going there my whole life. I'm now in my 40s, along with my entire family, including my aunts, uncles, and cousins. It's where we party and relax. We play cards, we fish, we ride ATVs, and usually a healthy amount of alcohol for the adults. There's about 70 cabins and some campgrounds around the lake. It's very lively in the summer, completely dead in the fall and winter. A few years back, some of us cousins decided to replace the original cabin floor with Pergo. People chipped in and I agreed to lay the flooring. This was now in October. One of my cousins, a female with a full-size truck, picked up the flooring and went to drop it off at the cabin. She has planned on staying the night and returning the next day, but as she was bringing in the Pergo, a man walked onto our lot and approached her. Luckily, she had a .45 holstered on her belt. We get hungry and curious black bears occasionally, and a mountain lion once in a blue moon. The guy starts asking questions, but she's more focused on his appearance. Typical homeless drug user look, but with dead eyes. She repels his question and tells him he needs to move on, while keeping her distance for enough time to draw and fire if necessary. Luckily again, he says bye and moves on. But she has a gut feeling to get the fuck out of there. She drops the flooring quick and splits. A few weeks after that, I head up for the weekend to work alone. She had told me about the guy, but I just figured he was a hungry drifter. I do a little prep work that evening and crash around 10 p.m. Maybe because I was alone, I decided to sleep with my pistol. Not sure what time, but I woke up to footsteps on the deck. Very light footsteps, but the deck is very creaky. Initially, I thought bear. I was about to sit up when a shadow crossed the window. I didn't move except to grab my gun, which was under the covers with me. I was glad I had, but I still felt relatively paralyzed in the moment. Then he just stepped in front of the window. My eyes immediately closed to a slit, but I could still see. It was a man, but just the figure with subtle details because there wasn't much moonlight. I could actually see his scraggly beard off the sides of his face, but his face had no detail. A gun only helps if you aren't petrified with fear. In the back of my mind, I knew if this guy got in, he was getting shot. Sure enough, after watching me for maybe an hour, he tried sliding the window. The window was locked because of the cooling temperatures. He moves to a sliding glass door, but that is locked as well. Then to the front door. The whole time I'm thinking, should I get up now and freak out, or wait until he gets inside? Honestly, I was getting pissed and almost wanted him to get inside. This piece of shit scared my cousin, and now he's been terrorizing me for the last few hours. The last I heard, he had tried the front door handle, but nothing for the last 5 minutes. I was sick of this and about to get up and go crazy when he's back at my window. I just continued laying there. There was a feeling in the air of madness, to best describe it. Like this person's energy was capable of horrible things. Another hour of watching me goes by and then he leaves. I keep listening but hear nothing else. Minutes are like hours and finally the sun comes up. I creep room to room, pistol ready, but find nothing. Another hour of the sun getting higher and I was ready to check outside. I searched the whole property, the woodshed and the water tower. He was gone, thankfully, but he left footprints, fresh off the deck with obviously different sole patterns than mine. I reported this to the rangers. We told other cabin owners to spread the word. I decided to bury it in my mind because I love the place, and I always go. Story number 5. When I was a child around the age of 7 or 8, I picked up the habit of getting on the phone and listening on phone calls of other people. My parents had just gotten new cordless phones, and my sister and I were allowed to each have one in our rooms. I would occasionally listen into my sister's calls of gossip, or my mom talking to her friends. Normally I would pick up right after a call was answered, and would immediately mute the phone. Most of the time I would become bored, and I would go right back to playing my N64. It was the excitement of no one knowing I was there that made it so fun, at least until that night. The night I felt like someone knew I was there, and that's when I stopped doing it. It was a weeknight during late fall, around midnight. I hadn't been able to sleep, so I was quietly playing video games in the dark with the sound off. The phone rang and I immediately got excited. Who would be calling this late, and for what reason? I waited until the ringer stopped, and I immediately picked up the phone and muted it. I heard my dad saying, No, I think you have the wrong number." The guy responds, "Nah, man, let me talk to Chris." My dad keeps insisting, "You have the wrong number." "No one by that name lives here," he told the man. "Please do not call back." My dad hangs up the phone, but I stay on. I then hear loud breathing for a couple seconds, followed by him saying, I'm going to kill you. I'm going to fucking kill you." Then he hung up. It's like he sensed that someone was still listening on the line. I never understood why this originally normal-sounding guy, who was looking to talk to his friend, would oddly say that on the phone, and in that tone of voice. That night I didn't sleep, and I quickly turned off the TV so the light wouldn't shine out the window to draw attention. After this, I no longer picked up the phone to listen in. So creepy guy who called and told me he was going to kill me. Let's never meet again. Story number 6. Myself and 2 other friends were driving through town late at night. We were on our way to pick up another friend so we could all go back to mine and my other friend's place to play video games. It was roughly 2 a.m. and pouring rain outside. To get to our friend's place, we needed to go up this road that was steep and a little winding. We get to this one particular turn in the road, which happens to also be the only section of road with a streetlight. As we come around the bend, standing under the streetlight in the middle of the road was a man. He's very tall and broad and had a solid wide stance, with his arms at both sides. My friend stops and everyone in the car just goes silent. We're all very confused and freaked out. I start telling my friend that maybe he should just back up and leave. However, my friend rolls down the window and asks the guy if everything is okay. The guy puts one hand out and starts stepping toward the car. I'm panicked now and I start yelling to my friend to back up. He backs up slowly and the guy starts stepping faster towards our car, still reaching out, but now he's yelling. Keep in mind, like I said, it's pouring rain, and this man is casually standing in the middle of the road at 2 a.m. My friend starts reversing quickly down the road and veers off into a gravel area. I suggest we call the cops about this. As we talk about it, a cop car drives up the road and we wave him down. We tell him what happened, and he says he's already told that man to go home once. The cop leaves and goes up the road in the direction of the man. We wait before attempting to go back up the road. When we do drive back up, the cop car is gone, and the man is also gone. We assume the cop picked him up and put him in the drunk tank for the night, but this man had to be on something a lot worse than alcohol. It felt like a scene right out of a horror movie. So to the creepy man at 2 a.m. in the pouring rain, let's not meet again.